Ethan Walker soared over the final jump at the West Kentucky Championships, the crowd's roar fading against the perfect rhythm of his stallion's hooves. 6 hours later, his ATV veered off a cliffside during a race with Tyler Reed, the son of the wealthiest ranch owner in the county. 2 years passed in a blur of hospital rooms and physical therapy, his champion trophies gathering dust in a house slowly drowning in medical bills. Then came the morning Ethan found his father's hidden letter in an old riding boot, revealing not an accident but a deliberate choice to end his life after financial ruin at the hands of Reed Enterprises, the truth turning Ethan's world to ash as he realized everything he'd believed about his family had been built on lies. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments along with the city you're watching from now. Let's continue with the story. Willow Creek Ranch stretched across 50 acres of Kentucky bluegrass, its white fences now weather-beaten and sagging like the shoulders of a once proud man. The indoor arena where Ethan had collected blue ribbons stood with its paint peeling, doors creaking in the autumn wind. 6 empty stalls in the main stable remained as silent reminders of horses sold to cover mounting debts. From his wheelchair on the porch, Ethan Walker stared at the faded sign swinging from a single chain. At 17, his upper body had developed impressive strength from 2 years of pushing himself everywhere, but his legs, once strong enough to command 1,000-pound animals, lay useless beneath a plaid blanket. His sandy brown hair fell across eyes that had once sparkled with ambition, but now held the flat, distant look of someone who had traveled too far from home to remember the way back. Inside their modest farmhouse, framed newspaper clippings chronicled a different Ethan standing tall on podiums, clutching trophies nearly as big as his torso. "Local boy takes national equestrian title," one headline proclaimed above a photo of 14-year-old Ethan, gap-toothed and grinning. That boy felt like a stranger now. Amanda Walker moved through their kitchen with the efficiency of someone accustomed to doing everything alone. At 43, grief had etched premature lines around her eyes, her blonde hair often hastily secured in a ponytail as she juggled nursing shifts at the county hospital. She'd sold her wedding ring 6 months ago to cover Ethan's specialized mattress. The final mortgage notice lay hidden beneath cookbooks, giving them exactly 30 days before Willow Creek Ranch would go to auction. "He's here again," Amanda said quietly, nodding toward the sleek black Mercedes parked beyond their property line. Martin Reed, Tyler's father, had been circling their land like a vulture, waiting for the inevitable foreclosure. His son Tyler, once Ethan's riding rival, now attended an elite equestrian academy in Virginia, his life apparently unmarked by the race that had shattered Ethan's spine. In the farthest paddock, separated from the few remaining horses, stood the newest arrival at Willow Creek. A massive Friesian stallion with a coat like polished obsidian paced the fence line, powerful muscles rippling beneath his sleek hide. His mane flowed like a black waterfall when he tossed his proud head. "That's the one they call Phantom," whispered old Bill Thompson, the 70-year-old stable hand who'd worked at Willow Creek since before Ethan was born. "Came from an estate sale after he trampled his owner. Nobody can get near him. Jackson's the only one who dares try." Phantom stopped his pacing suddenly, nostrils flaring as he turned toward the house. Even from a distance, Ethan could see the scars across the stallion's gleaming flank, evidence of a brutal past. For a moment, horse and boy locked eyes across the expanse of failing dreams and broken fences, 2 wounded souls recognizing something familiar in each other's pain. Amanda's old station wagon bounced over the rutted driveway, each jolt sending spikes of pain through Ethan's lower back. He winced, but said nothing. After 2 years, he'd learned to swallow pain like bitter medicine. "Dr. Mitchell says this visit is just to discuss options," Amanda said, her knuckles white against the steering wheel. "No pressure, just seeing what's possible." Ethan stared out the window. "Nothing's possible, Mom. You know that." The car rounded the final curve, bringing Willow Creek's indoor arena into view. Once, this approach had filled Ethan with excitement. Now, his stomach clenched with something between grief and rage. "Ethan, please. She thinks equine therapy might help with what, making me walk, growing new nerves in my spine." Ethan's voice cracked. "Or just making everyone feel better about putting the crippled kid near horses." Amanda fell silent, parking near the arena entrance where a ramp had been installed. As she helped Ethan into his wheelchair, a flash of movement caught his eye. In the distance, a massive black shape thundered across the far paddock phantom, running with a wild, desperate grace that made Ethan's chest tighten. The stallion slid to a stop at the fence, head high, sides heaving. Even from here, Ethan could see the animal's eyes alert, distrustful, scanning constantly for threats. Something in that vigilant gaze felt unnervingly familiar. "Don't stare at that one," came a gruff voice. Ethan turned to find a man in his 50s, limping toward them, his left leg moving stiffly beneath worn jeans. A jagged scar ran from his temple into his salt and pepper beard. His eyes, deep-set and wary, assessed Ethan with the kind of look that seemed to catalog weaknesses. "Jackson Carter," the man said, not offering his hand. "I manage the stable now." "Ethan used to ride here," Amanda began. "I know who he is." Jackson cut her off. "Everyone around here knows the Walker boy." His gaze flicked toward the Friesian. "That stallion isn't part of any therapy program. He's not safe." Ethan bristled. "I didn't come for therapy." Jackson's expression didn't change. "Good. Because that horse has sent 3 handlers to the hospital. One nearly lost an arm." Before Ethan could respond, a glossy Range Rover pulled up beside their weathered station wagon, the contrast almost comical. Martin Reed stepped out, his Italian loafers incongruous on the dusty ground. Behind him emerged Tyler, lean and tanned from his time in Virginia. "Amanda," Martin nodded cordially, as though he hadn't been trying to acquire their property for months. "Just showing Tyler the improvements we're planning once the auction goes through. Hope you don't mind." Ethan felt his mother stiffen beside him. "The auction isn't for 30 days, Martin." Of course. Martin's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Just good business planning. Tyler's interested in developing the equestrian center further when he comes home from school next year." Tyler stood awkwardly behind his father, his gaze darting toward Ethan, then away. 2 years had passed since they'd faced each other. 2 years since Tyler had visited the hospital, pale and stammering about how sorry he was, how he hadn't meant for the race to end that way. "Hello, Ethan?" Tyler said quietly. Ethan stared through him. In his dreams, Tyler's face morphed into a demon's, laughing as Ethan's ATV careened over the edge, but awake, facing his former friend. Ethan felt nothing at all. "Dr. Mitchell is waiting for us," Amanda said, her voice tight as she began pushing Ethan's wheelchair toward the arena entrance. "Think about my offer, Amanda," Martin called after them. "It would solve a lot of problems." Inside the cool dimness of the arena, Dr. Sarah Mitchell waited, clipboard in hand. Her practical boots and casual posture couldn't disguise her clinical assessment as Ethan approached. "Thanks for coming, Ethan," she said, her voice warm but professional. "I've been working with some remarkable cases using equine-assisted therapy, and I think I'm not getting on a horse." Ethan interrupted flatly. "I can't feel anything below my waist. I can't grip with my legs. It's pointless." Dr. Mitchell considered him. "The therapy isn't always about riding, Ethan. Sometimes it's about connection. Horses respond to our emotional states in ways humans can't." From somewhere outside came a piercing scream, not human, but equine. The sound of a horse in distress or rage, then shouting, the pounding of boots. "That damn Friesian!" someone yelled. "He's broken through the fence again." Ethan wheeled himself to the arena entrance, ignoring his mother's protests. Outside, chaos unfolded. The massive black stallion had indeed escaped his paddock and was facing off against two handlers with ropes. Phantom's eyes rolled white with fear, his powerful body trembling not with weakness but with barely contained fury. "Get the tranquilizer," someone shouted. "He'll kill someone before you get close enough." Another answered. Jackson Carter limped into the fray, his face grim. "Everyone back off," he ordered. "You're making it worse." Phantom reared, his forelegs pawing the air dangerously close to Jackson's head. The man didn't flinch, standing his ground as the massive horse came down, snorting and tossing his magnificent head. Ethan couldn't look away. The stallion's movements weren't random aggression, they were defensive, protective. Each person who approached was met with increasing distress. Phantom wasn't attacking, he was terrified. Without thinking, Ethan wheeled himself forward, ignoring his mother's gasp and Dr. Mitchell's warning hand. Something about the horse's panic resonated deep within him. He knew that feeling, the suffocating sense of being trapped, of having no control, of being surrounded by people who claimed to help but couldn't possibly understand. "Ethan, stop!" Amanda cried. But he kept moving, wheeling steadily toward the chaos. Handlers scrambled out of his way, too shocked to intervene. Jackson turned, his weathered face registering alarm. "Kid, stay back. This isn't a game." Phantom froze, his attention suddenly fixing on the approaching wheelchair. His nostrils flared, taking in Ethan's scent. The massive stallion went utterly still, muscles quivering under his gleaming coat. For a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. Then Ethan spoke, his voice low and steady in a way it hadn't been since before the accident. "I know what it's like," he said quietly. The words meant only for the horse. "To have everything taken from you, to be trapped in a body that won't do what you need it to do." Phantom's ears flicked forward. One deliberate step brought the stallion closer to Ethan's wheelchair. Then another. The handlers backed away, ropes dangling uselessly from their hands. Jackson made a slight movement as if to intervene, then stopped himself. The great Friesian lowered his head, breath warm against Ethan's useless legs. Their eyes met boy and horse, both broken, both defiant, and something electric passed between them. In the suspended silence, Phantom's breath fogged in the cool autumn air. The massive stallion stood motionless, ears pricked forward with an intensity that made the handlers exchange nervous glances. No one dared move, not Amanda with her hand pressed against her mouth, not Dr. Mitchell with her clipboard clutched to her chest, not the stable hands with their useless ropes dangling. "Easy," Ethan whispered, holding the stallion's gaze. His hand, almost of its own accord, began to rise toward Phantom's muzzle. That's when Jackson broke the spell, stepping deliberately between Ethan and the horse, his scarred face tight with anger. "That's enough," he barked, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "Get that boy out of here before that animal kills him." Phantom snorted, backing away at Jackson's sudden movement, head tossing in agitation. Two handlers seized the opportunity to loop a rope around the stallion's neck. The Friesian's momentary calm dissolved into renewed panic. He reared, hooves slashing the air dangerously close to Jackson, who didn't flinch. "I said, move!" Jackson ordered without looking back at Ethan. Amanda rushed forward, grabbing the handles of Ethan's wheelchair and pulling him backward despite his protests. The stallion's eyes followed him, wild with fear, but somehow Ethan would swear to it later, also filled with recognition. What the hell were you thinking? Jackson rounded on Ethan once the horse had been secured and led away, his voice shaking with barely controlled fury. That animal is dangerous. He's killed before. He wasn't going to hurt me, Ethan insisted, a strange certainty filling him. You don't know what you're talking about, boy. Jackson's voice lowered, threaded with something that might have been concern beneath the anger. That horse has scars you can't see. His last owner beat him near to death before Phantom finally fought back. Some things can't be fixed once they're broken. The words hung in the air between them, a truth meant for the horse but landing squarely on Ethan. Jackson? Dr. Mitchell intervened, her tone professional but firm. I think we've had enough excitement for today. Amanda, perhaps we should reschedule our consultation. But Ethan couldn't stop replaying those moments with Phantom, the connection, immediate and undeniable. He has whip marks, he said suddenly, causing Jackson to turn back with narrowed eyes. Across his left flank and shoulder. I saw them. Jackson's expression shifted almost imperceptibly. How would you know that? Because I was looking at him. Really looking. Ethan met the older man's gaze without wavering. Not just seeing what I expected to see. Something passed between them, a flicker of reluctant respect in Jackson's weathered face. Without another word, he turned and limped after the handlers who were struggling to return Phantom to his reinforced stall. The drive home passed in strained silence. Amanda's knuckles remained white on the steering wheel, her profile tense in the afternoon light. You could have been killed, she finally said as they turned onto their property. What were you thinking, Ethan? I was thinking that for the first time in 2 years, something actually made sense. The words spilled out before he could stop them. That horse isn't crazy. Mom, he's hurt and scared and tired of people trying to control him. Amanda parked and turned to face her son, her eyes bright with tears. And what exactly were you planning to do about it? You can't save a dangerous animal. Ethan, you need to focus on your own recovery. What recovery? The bitterness in his voice was like acid. We both know I'm not getting better. This, he gestured at his wheelchair. This is it for me. Forever. Dr. Mitchell thinks the therapy could help with your depression. Even if I never walk again. Ethan finished flatly. You can say it, Mom. It's been 2 years. Amanda's shoulders slumped. She suddenly looked much older than her years. We're losing the ranch. Ethan, I've been trying to find the right time to tell you. The words landed like a physical blow. What are you talking about? The medical bills. Your father's life insurance wasn't enough. I've been working double shifts, but we're 3 months behind on the mortgage. Her voice cracked. Martin Reed has offered to buy the property before it goes to auction, but I've been holding out, hoping. Ethan stared at her, the full weight of their situation crashing down. Not just his broken body, but their broken lives. The ranch, his father's legacy, the only home he'd ever known slipping away like everything else. How long? He asked, his voice strange in his own ears. 30 days until the bank forecloses? Maybe less. That night, sleep eluded Ethan. He kept seeing Phantom's eyes, hearing Jackson's words, some things can't be fixed once they're broken. Outside his window, the moon cast silver light across what remained of their once thriving ranch. Decision crystallized in him with the coming dawn, bypassing his electric wheelchair for the older manual one that made less noise. Ethan dressed in the half-light. The house was silent as he maneuvered down the ramp his father had built after the accident, the one project he'd completed before disappearing into his own darkness. The 5 miles to Willow Creek Ranch took over an hour, his arms burning with the effort by the time the stable came into view. The place was quiet, the staff not yet arrived for morning feeding. Only one ancient truck sat in the gravel lot Old Bill's, the stable hand who practically lived on the property. Ethan found the old man mucking out stalls, his gnarled hands working with practiced efficiency despite his 70-plus years. "Jesus, boy." Bill startled at the sight of Ethan rolling up to the stable entrance. "What in God's name are you doing here at this hour?" "I need to see him, Bill." Ethan kept his voice low. "The Friesian." Bill's roomy eyes narrowed. "Jackson will have my hide if I let you near that devil." "Please, I just want to look at him. From outside the stall." The old man studied him, weathered face, unreadable. Finally, he sighed. "Your daddy would have done the same foolish thing. God rest his soul. Come on, then. But you stay outside the bars. You hear me?" As they approached the end stall, larger than the others and reinforced with extra planking, Bill spoke quietly. "That horse ain't what everyone thinks. You know. Been watching him. He only fights when he's scared." "What do you know about him?" "Before he came here." Bill glanced around before answering. "Belonged to a rich feller from Ohio. Terrible temper. That man. Rumor has it he'd beat his horses when they didn't perform. Phantom was his prize, paid $30,000 for him as a colt. Then one day, the man is found dead in the stable. Trampled. Everyone blamed the Stallion." They rounded the corner to Phantom's stall. The magnificent horse stood in the shadows, his black coat absorbing what little light filtered through the small window. At their approach, his head lifted, nostrils flaring. "I'll leave you be," Bill murmured. "Don't do nothing stupid, Walker." Alone with the Stallion, Ethan wheeled closer to the bars. "Hey, big guy," he said softly. "Remember me." Phantom's ears flicked forward. One deliberate step brought him closer to the stall door, then another. There was no panic now, no wild thrashing, just measured curiosity. "I know about the scars," Ethan continued, his voice barely above a whisper. "I've got some too, different kind, but same story." He tapped his useless legs. "Neither of us asked for this, did we?" The Stallion lowered his great head, breath warm through the bars. Something tightened in Ethan's chest, an unexpected emotion he couldn't name. "I'm going to come back," he promised. "And we're going to figure this out together." From the shadows behind the feed room, Jackson Carter watched silently, his scarred face unreadable. The pre-dawn ritual began quietly the next morning, Ethan slipping from his bed to his wheelchair, navigating the silent house, pushing himself along the damp country roads as pink light crept across the Kentucky hills. His shoulders burned with each mile, but something pulled him forward, something stronger than pain or reason. By the 5th morning, his arms no longer trembled with the effort. By the 10th, he'd shaved 15 minutes off the journey. Each day followed the same pattern: arrive before the stable hands, spend 30 minutes with Phantom, then disappear before Jackson could catch him. Old Bill kept their secret, his roomy eyes crinkling with something like hope when he'd spot Ethan rolling up the gravel drive. "Morning, Walker boy," he'd mumble, handing over a carrot or apple. "Our friend's been restless, waiting for you, I reckon." On this particular morning, day 12, Ethan rolled to Phantom's stall with an apple and a new determination. The massive Friesian no longer retreated to the shadows when Ethan appeared. Instead, he approached the bars immediately, his velvet muzzle extending in quiet greeting. "Today, we try something new," Ethan said softly, producing a soft brush from his backpack. He'd found it in his father's old tack room, still wrapped in its original packaging. "No pressure. Big guy, your choice." Phantom's nostrils flared at the unfamiliar object. Ethan held it still, letting the horse examine it thoroughly. "Your coat's a mess," Ethan continued conversationally. Probably feels uncomfortable. I know how that is when your body doesn't feel like your own anymore. Carefully, he extended the brush through the bars. Phantom flinched initially, then slowly, cautiously, leaned his neck toward the bristles. The first stroke was tentative, the second more confident. By the fifth, Phantom had closed his eyes, leaning into the brush like a house cat. Something loosened in Ethan's chest, a knot of tension he hadn't realized he'd been carrying. His eyes burned unexpectedly as he continued the gentle strokes. My dad used to say you could tell everything about a man by how his horse responded to him, Ethan said, his voice thick. Wonder what he'd make of us. Huh. He'd say you're both too stubborn for your own good. The voice from behind made Ethan start. Jackson stood at the end of the aisle, arms crossed, expression unreadable. How long have you been watching me? Ethan asked, his hand stilling on the brush. Long enough. Jackson limped closer, his bad leg dragging slightly against the straw-covered concrete. Bill can't keep a secret worth a damn. Ethan braced for anger, for prohibition. Instead, Jackson studied the Friesian with narrowed eyes. 2 weeks you've been coming. Horse hasn't tried to kill you yet. He doesn't want to hurt anyone, Ethan said defensively. He's just scared. Jackson's weathered face remained impassive. Fear's more dangerous than meanness. Boy, scared animal will do things even a mean one won't. His gaze shifted to Ethan. Same goes for people. An uncomfortable silence stretched between them. Finally, Jackson sighed. Show me what you've been doing with him. For the next 30 minutes, Ethan demonstrated his approach, speaking consistently in a low voice, making no sudden movements, allowing Phantom to set the pace of each interaction. Jackson watched without comment, his eyes missing nothing. You've got a touch, he finally said. Like your old man. Ethan's hand froze mid-stroke. You knew my father. Something flickered across Jackson's face, too quick to interpret. Everybody around here knew Robert Walker, best horseman in 3 counties. He straightened. Decision apparently made. If you're going to do this, you're going to do it right. Meet me here tomorrow at 6. We'll use the small arena where there's less risk. Less risk of what? Jackson's smile was grim. Less risk of that animal killing you where someone important might see. Before Ethan could respond, the sound of tires on gravel announced the arrival of other staff. Jackson turned to leave, then paused. Bring gloves. Your hands are going to blister if you keep using that brush wrong. Physical therapy isn't just about your body, Ethan, Dr. Mitchell said, watching him struggle through a set of core exercises in her clinic that afternoon. It's about reconnecting with who you are, rebuilding your sense of self. Ethan didn't respond, focusing instead on the burning in his obliques as he pulled the resistance band taut. His arms, already stronger from wheeling to the ranch each morning, strained against the increased tension Dr. Mitchell had set. Your mother tells me you've been going out early. She's worried. Of course his mother had noticed. The mud on his wheels, the exhaustion at breakfast. I'm just getting fresh air, he replied flatly. Doctor. Mitchell's expression remained neutral. Fresh air doesn't give you those calluses, or that sense of purpose I'm seeing for the first time since your accident. Ethan released the band, breathing hard. Don't psychoanalyze me. It's my job. She handed him a towel. Just like it's my job to tell you that whatever you're doing, it's working. Your upper body strength has improved more in the last 2 weeks than in the previous 6 months. Outside the window of the rehabilitation center, rain began to fall, a gentle Kentucky shower that would turn the roads to mud. Ethan thought of tomorrow morning, of Jackson waiting at the stable, of Phantom in his stall. He'd have to leave even earlier to navigate the slick terrain. "I've been working with a horse," he admitted finally. "The Friesian at Willow Creek." To her credit, Dr. Mitchell's expression showed only mild surprise. "Phantom? The one everyone's afraid of? He's not what they think. Neither are you." She made a note on her clipboard. "Your mother also mentioned the ranch might be sold soon. That must be difficult." The familiar wave of helplessness threatened to overwhelm him. 30 years my dad built that place. Now it's going to some developer who'll probably turn it into condos." "The Reeds," Dr. Mitchell said, nodding. "I've heard Martin Reed can be persistent when he wants something." "He's a vulture," Ethan's voice hardened, "waiting for us to fail so he can swoop in." Dr. Mitchell studied him for a long moment. What if there was a way to showcase the ranch's value beyond real estate, to remind people what Willow Creek used to mean to this community? Like what? The Willow Creek Showcase used to be an annual tradition, right? Your father hosted it to feature new training techniques, demonstrate his horse's capabilities. Ethan hadn't thought of the showcase in years. Before his accident, it had been the highlight of their autumn. Hundreds of visitors, demonstrations, potential buyers coming from several states away. "No one would come now," he said bitterly. "Place is falling apart." "People might, for the right attraction." Dr. Mitchell's expression turned thoughtful. "A young man connecting with a horse everyone else fears, that's the kind of story that draws attention." The idea was absurd. "Phantom barely lets me brush him through the bars. That's not exactly showcase material." "Not yet," she agreed. "But it could be, with the right help and the right motivation." The seed planted. Ethan couldn't stop thinking about it as his mother drove him home through the rain. The showcase had always been his father's pride, a chance to demonstrate the Walker method of gentle training, to secure new clients, to celebrate everything Willow Creek stood for. Amanda's face was drawn with fatigue as they pulled into the driveway. At the kitchen table, she spread out a pile of papers, bills marked with red final notice stamps, bank statements, the foreclosure warning. "Martin called again," she said wearily. "His offer stands until the end of the week. After that, he'll just wait for the auction." Ethan stared at the papers, the physical manifestation of their disintegrating lives. "How much do we need to save the place?" Amanda looked up, surprised by the question. $48,000 to clear the debt and make the next 3 payments while we get back on our feet." "But Ethan, that's not—" "What if we revive the showcase?" His mother's expression softened with pity. "Honey, we don't have any horses worth showcasing anymore. The last 3 were sold to cover your hospital bills." "We have Phantom," Amanda stilled. "The Friesian Ethan. That horse is dangerous. Jackson only took him as a favor to the rescue organization." "He's not dangerous with me." The certainty in his voice surprised even him. "Mom, I've been going to the stable every morning for 2 weeks. Phantom and I, we understand each other." His mother's face paled. "You've been what Dr. Mitchell thinks we could be the main event. People would come to see us, the boy in the wheelchair and the killer horse. We could charge admission, find sponsors, maybe even attract new clients for training." "Absolutely not." Amanda's voice sharpened with fear. "I've already lost your father. I will not lose you to some dangerous obsession with proving yourself." The words hung in the air between them, sharp as broken glass. Ethan wheeled back from the table, his face hardening into something older than his 17 years. "Dad's gone because he gave up," he said quietly. "I won't make the same mistake." The rain had turned to a fine mist by dawn. Ethan pushed his wheelchair through the muddy track, his shoulders burning with the extra effort, his mind replaying the argument with his mother. He'd left while she was still sleeping, unable to face her fear, her certainty that he was chasing ghosts. Jackson was waiting at the small arena, looking as though he hadn't slept. A lead rope hung from his scarred hands, and beside him stood old Bill, his ancient face creased with worry. "Thought you might not come," Jackson said gruffly. "Said I would." Ethan's wheels struggled against the wet ground. Jackson's eyes narrowed. "Your mother know you're here?" "I'm 17, not 7. "That's a no." "Then—" Jackson sighed. "Bill, help him onto the mounting block. I'll bring Phantom in." The small arena had been prepared, soft footing raked smooth, mounting block positioned near the center, gates secured. Ethan settled onto the wooden platform, his heart suddenly hammering against his ribs. This wasn't brushing a horse through stall bars. This was something else entirely. "Listen carefully," Jackson said, returning without the horse. "When I bring him in, don't move, don't speak. Let him approach you in his own time. If he shows any sign of agitation, ears back, tail swishing, head high, we end this immediately. Understood?" Ethan nodded, throat too dry for words. "If, and this is a big if, he comes to you willingly, you can touch his neck. Nowhere else today. We take this slow." Jackson's voice was deadly serious. "This isn't about you proving something. It's about building trust with a 1,000-pound animal that could kill you with one move." The arena gate creaked as Jackson opened it, leading Phantom inside with the lightest touch on the lead rope. The Friesian's coat gleamed in the early morning light, his powerful body tense but not panicked. Jackson released the lead rope, stepping back to the fence. For a long moment, Phantom stood motionless, assessing this new situation. His nostrils flared as he caught Ethan's scent on the breeze. One hoof pawed the ground not aggressively, but questioningly. Ethan remained still, remembering Jackson's instructions. His hands gripped the edge of the mounting block, knuckles white with the effort of not reaching out, not calling to the horse. Slowly, with deliberate grace, Phantom began to circle the arena. Each revolution brought him slightly closer to where Ethan sat. His eyes, intelligent and wary, never left the boy. After the third circuit, he stopped, head high, ears pricked forward. Time seemed to stretch like taffy. Ethan's breath fogged in the cool morning air. From the fence, Jackson and Bill watched in complete silence. Then, with delicate precision, Phantom took a step toward Ethan, then another, and another, until his velvet muzzle was inches from Ethan's outstretched hand. The touch, when it came, sent electricity up Ethan's arm, warm breath, softer than silk, the gentle lip movements exploring his palm. Phantom's eyes, so close now, revealed depths Ethan hadn't seen before. Intelligence, yes, but also a profound sadness, a wariness born of betrayal. "Hey, big guy," Ethan whispered, voice breaking slightly. "It's okay now. I've got you." A sound from the arena entrance broke the spell. Tyler Reed stood at the gate, his expensive riding clothes a stark contrast to the weathered wood of the old arena. His eyes widened at the scene before him, Ethan on the mounting block, hand outstretched to the notorious Stallion. "What the hell?" Tyler's voice carried across the arena. Phantom's head jerked up, eyes rolling at the sudden intrusion. He backed away from Ethan, sides heaving with sudden tension. "Damn it, Reed," Jackson barked. "Close that gate and keep your voice down." But the damage was done. Phantom circled nervously, his brief moment of trust shattered by the unexpected visitor. Jackson moved slowly to retrieve the lead rope, speaking in low, soothing tones until he had the Stallion under control. "Get that horse settled, then meet me in the office," Jackson told Bill. Leading Phantom from the arena, his glare at Tyler could have stripped paint. Tyler approached Ethan, his expression a mixture of shock and something harder to define. "I didn't know you were working with horses again. You don't know anything about me anymore." Ethan's voice was cold. "Look, I came to talk to you about the ranch. My father's offer is a vulture's bargain. We're not interested." Tyler's face tightened. "You should be. Dad's being generous, considering the state of the place. After the auction, he won't need to offer anything." He hesitated, then added more quietly, "I didn't know how bad things had gotten for you guys. I'm sorry." "Sorry." The laugh that escaped Ethan was harsh. "For which part? The accident that put me in this chair, or your father circling what's left of my family's legacy?" Something like shame crossed Tyler's face. "The accident was what?" "Tyler," Ethan's voice rose. "An accident. Is that what you told yourself? What your father's lawyers told the sheriff?" The color drained from Tyler's face. Before he could respond, Jackson reappeared at the arena entrance. "Walker, in my office. Now." His tone brooked no argument. To Tyler, he added, "You off my property. Visiting hours start at 10. In the cramped office that smelled of leather and liniment, Jackson paced like a caged predator, his bad leg dragging slightly on the worn floorboards. "What you did out there," he finally said, stopping in front of Ethan's wheelchair. "With Phantom, I haven't seen anything like it since—" He broke off, jaw working. "Since what?" Jackson ignored the question. "The Reed boy. What's your history there?" Ethan stared at his hands. "We were friends once, competed against each other. Then the ATV accident happened. The one that put you in that chair." "Yeah." Jackson's eyes narrowed. "And now his daddy wants your family's land." "Seems that way." For a long moment, Jackson studied Ethan, as though weighing a decision. Finally, he pulled open a filing cabinet, extracting a worn leather journal. "Your father kept this," he said, placing it on the desk between them. "His notes on every horse he ever trained, including a young Friesian colt he worked with 6 years ago." Ethan stared at the journal, his father's familiar handwriting visible on the worn pages. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying Phantom isn't a stranger to Willow Creek." Jackson tapped the journal. "Or to the Walker method." A memory flickered in Ethan's mind, a coal-black yearling, all legs and spirit, his father's hand gentle on the young horse's neck. "Midnight Rambler," he whispered. "Dad sold him to a buyer from Ohio." Jackson nodded grimly. For a small fortune, horse had championship potential, perfect conformation, perfect gaits, perfect temperament. Phantom is Midnight Rambler. Ethan's mind raced, connecting fragments. But how did he end up back here? And why is he so traumatized? Jackson finished. Because some people shouldn't own horses, or anything else that breathes. His scarred face hardened. Richard Talbot was Phantom's owner after your father sold him. Wealthy man, impatient. When the horse didn't progress as quickly as he wanted, he turned to harsher methods. The implications settled over Ethan like a shroud. The scars. Yes. And when Talbot ended up dead in his own stable, everyone assumed the horse had finally had enough. No one questioned it too closely. Man had enemies. A young wife who inherited everything. Jackson's voice was flat, emotionless. Rescue organization contacted me about taking the Stallion because no one else would touch him. Dangerous reputation. But you knew who he really was. I had my suspicions. The markings matched. The age was right. Jackson tapped the journal again. And now, seeing him with you, I'm certain. The morning of the Willow Creek showcase dawned clear and crisp, the kind of perfect autumn day that seemed crafted for new beginnings. 21 days of grueling work had transformed both Ethan and Phantom. The once wild Stallion now responded to Ethan's voice commands with attentive ears and willing movements. Ethan's upper body had developed a lean strength. His face had lost its hollow pallor, and something like purpose had returned to his eyes. Behind the arena, trailers lined the freshly graveled parking area, more vehicles than Willow Creek had seen in years. Dr. Mitchell's connections had brought 3 local news outlets. Old Bill had rallied former clients. Even the feed store had sponsored a modest refreshment tent. Posters announcing "The Boy Who Tamed Phantom" adorned the roadside for 5 miles in every direction. In the preparation stall, Ethan's hands trembled slightly as he brushed Phantom's gleaming coat. The Friesian stood calm despite the unusual bustle around them, his dark eyes tracking Ethan's wheelchair with quiet attention. "They're still coming in," Jackson reported, limping into the stall area. "Parking's almost full." His weathered face betrayed nothing, but the careful press of his hand against Phantom's neck spoke volumes. "He's ready. Question is, are you—" Ethan set down the brush. "What if I can't do it? What if he senses my nerves and panics? Then we'll handle it." Jackson's voice softened a fraction. "But he trusts you, Walker, more than he's trusted anyone since your father first worked with him. That doesn't just disappear because there's a crowd." From outside came the sound of an expensive engine, the distinctive purr of Martin Reed's Mercedes. Ethan's stomach tightened. "They're here," he said unnecessarily. Jackson's expression hardened. "Remember what we discussed. This isn't just about saving a horse anymore. It's about saving your home." A knock at the stable door interrupted them. Amanda Walker entered, dressed in clothes Ethan hadn't seen since before the accident, a pressed blouse, tailored slacks, boots polished to a shine. She'd styled her hair and applied makeup, erasing some of the exhaustion that had become her constant companion. "The bank representative is here," she said, her voice carefully neutral. "And the Reeds? Martin brought his attorney." "Of course he did." Jackson's tone dripped contempt. Amanda's eyes found her son. "Ethan, are you sure about this? We could still accept Martin's offer. Start fresh somewhere else. This is our home. Mom." Ethan's voice was steady despite the churning in his stomach. "Dad built it. I'm not letting it go without a fight." Something flickered across Amanda's face. Pride mingled with fear. She nodded once, touching Phantom's neck gently before withdrawing. As she left, Tyler Reed appeared in the doorway, hovering awkwardly. His expensive riding clothes looked out of place among the worn wood and aged leather of Willow Creek's stable. "Can I talk to you?" he asked, eyes darting nervously to Jackson. "Alone." Jackson glanced at Ethan, who nodded. 5 minutes, the trainer growled. Stepping outside but leaving the door cracked, Tyler approached cautiously, keeping a respectful distance from Phantom. The stallion's ears flicked back momentarily, then forward again as he assessed the visitor. "I didn't know my father was bringing his lawyer," Tyler began, voice low. "This isn't how I wanted things to play out." "What did you expect?" Ethan adjusted his position in the wheelchair, forcing Tyler to step back. "Your father's been waiting to get his hands on our land for years." "It's not like that." Tyler's face flushed. "Dad thinks he's helping, offering a way out before the bank takes everything." Ethan's laugh was bitter. "Helping by offering half what the property's worth." "I'm trying to fix things, Ethan." Tyler's voice cracked slightly. "Ever since the accident, don't." Ethan's tone could have frozen water. "Don't pretend this makes up for what happened." Tyler paled. "I've thought about telling the truth, about that day. The race." Something cold settled in Ethan's stomach. The memory had always been fragmented, the ATV climbing the ridge, Tyler beside him. Then, Nothing but darkness and pain. What truth? Tyler's eyes darted to the door where Jackson might be listening. I was the one who suggested the ridge trail. I knew it was dangerous. I knew there was a washout on the far side. His voice dropped to a whisper. I just wanted to win once, to beat you at something. I never thought you knew. The words felt like ground glass in Ethan's throat. You knew about the washout. Tyler's face crumpled. I was going to warn you before we got there. But then you pulled ahead, and I didn't call out. I told myself you'd see it in time. The revelation crashed through Ethan like a physical blow. Not an accident, not bad luck or poor judgment, a deliberate choice that had cost him everything. Get out, he whispered. Ethan, please, get out. The shout startled Phantom, who sidestepped nervously, his massive body blocking Tyler from coming closer to Ethan. Jackson appeared instantly in the doorway, taking in the scene with narrowed eyes. Time's up, Reed, he said coldly. The show starts in 20 minutes. I suggest you find your seat. After Tyler slunk away, Jackson turned to Ethan. You want to tell me what that was about? Ethan's hands trembled on the wheels of his chair. He knew, he managed, voice strangled, about the washout on the ridge. He knew and he didn't warn me. Understanding dawned on Jackson's face, followed by a flash of dangerous anger. That little— No! Ethan cut him off. Not now. We have a showcase to save. Jackson studied him for a long moment, then nodded once. Breathe, Walker. Channel it. Phantom will feel whatever you're feeling, so make damn sure it's not blind rage. Ethan closed his eyes, drawing a deep breath. The anger still burned, but beneath it lay something steadier determination. He'd lost 2 years to that ridge. He wouldn't lose today, too. I'm ready, he said, opening his eyes. Let's do this. The main arena of Willow Creek had been transformed. Fresh sawdust covered the ground. The faded walls had received a hasty coat of white paint, and every available folding chair circled the perimeter. To Ethan's shock, nearly all were filled curious locals, horse enthusiasts, even a few trainers from neighboring counties whom he recognized from his competition days. Near the entrance sat Martin Reed, his expression carefully neutral as he spoke to a woman in a conservative suit, the bank representative. Ethan guessed. Beside them. Tyler stared at the ground, unable to meet anyone's eyes. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Mitchell's voice rang out from the portable speaker system they'd rented. Welcome to the revival of the Willow Creek Showcase. Today, we're witnessing something remarkable, a demonstration of trust, patience, and the extraordinary bond between human and horse. Ethan positioned his wheelchair at the arena entrance, Phantom standing quietly beside him with Jackson holding the lead rope. The stallion's ears flicked forward, alert but not anxious despite the crowd. 2 years ago, Ethan Walker was a champion rider with a promising future. Dr. Mitchell continued. A tragic accident changed everything. Meanwhile, the stallion you're about to meet developed a reputation for being dangerous, untrainable, a killer. A murmur rippled through the audience. Ethan glimpsed his mother seated near the front, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Today, Ethan will demonstrate how trust can transform even the most broken spirits. I present to you, Ethan Walker and Phantom. Jackson released the lead rope, nodding once to Ethan. It's all you now, kid, he said quietly. Show them what you've got. Ethan wheeled into the arena, Phantom walking beside him without physical connection, no lead rope, no halter, just the invisible bond they'd forged over 3 weeks of dawn sessions. The crowd's hushed whispers followed them to center ring, where Ethan stopped, facing the assembled spectators. "This is Phantom," Ethan said, his voice carrying across the suddenly silent arena. "Most of you have heard he's dangerous, that he killed a man. What you haven't heard is his story." Ethan began to move his wheelchair in a slow circle, Phantom matching his pace with fluid grace. "This horse was born here at Willow Creek. My father trained him as a colt before selling him to a buyer who didn't understand that trust can't be forced." The stallion responded to each subtle movement of Ethan's hand, speeding up, slowing down, changing direction, never touching, yet perfectly synchronized. Phantom's previous owner used fear and pain to control him. Ethan continued, voice steady, despite the emotion threatening to choke him. "The scars are still visible if you know where to look." At a gentle hand signal, Phantom moved to Ethan's side, allowing the audience to see the pale marks across his gleaming hide. A collective intake of breath whispered through the crowd. "I understand something about scars," Ethan said, his voice dropping slightly. "About having control ripped away. About finding yourself suddenly at the mercy of a world that doesn't understand your pain." In the front row, Amanda pressed a hand to her mouth, tears tracking silently down her cheeks. Even Martin Reed had stopped whispering to his attorney, his attention fixed on the boy and horse in the center ring. "What Phantom taught me, what I'm showing you today, is that broken doesn't mean destroyed." Ethan raised his hand, and Phantom immediately lifted into a floating trot, circling the wheelchair with powerful, graceful strides. Sometimes, broken just means ready to be rebuilt into something different, something stronger. For 15 minutes, Ethan guided Phantom through a series of movements that showcased both the stallion's exceptional training and the depth of their connection. The Friesian responded to voice, hand signals, even the subtle shift of Ethan's wheelchair. Throughout, Ethan narrated, explaining the walker method his father had developed, the gentle approach based on trust rather than dominance. As the demonstration neared its conclusion, Ethan guided Phantom to the center of the ring. The arena had fallen completely silent, every eye fixed on the pair. "There's one last thing I want to show you," Ethan said, his voice now steady and clear. "Something no one but Jackson and I have seen, something that proves what trust can accomplish." He positioned his wheelchair, then raised his hand, palm out toward Phantom. The stallion stood perfectly still, focused entirely on Ethan. "Kneel," Ethan said softly. For a breathless moment, nothing happened. Then, with deliberate grace, the massive Friesian lowered himself to his knees before Ethan's wheelchair. The stallion's proud head bowed, not in submission but in trust absolute. A collective gasp rose from the audience, followed by stunned silence. Then, from somewhere in the back, applause began, tentative at first, then swelling until it filled the arena. People rose to their feet, their faces reflecting astonishment and something more profound. As Phantom rose again at Ethan's quiet command, the boy caught sight of Martin Reed's face. The businessman's usual mask of confident indifference had cracked, revealing something that might have been respect. But it was his mother's expression that Ethan would remember later, fierce pride mingled with a hope she hadn't dared show in 2 long years. In that moment, with the crowd on their feet and Phantom standing steady beside him, Ethan felt something he'd thought lost forever possibility. Whatever happened next, he had proven what he came to prove. Not just to the audience, not just to the Reeds or the bank, but to himself. Broken didn't mean destroyed. Sometimes it just meant ready to become something new. The applause lingered like summer heat, following Ethan and Phantom as they exited the arena. Hands reached out to pat Ethan's shoulder, voices called congratulations. For a moment, it felt like victory clean and complete. Then Amanda collapsed. 1 second she was smiling through tears, and the next she crumpled against Dr. Mitchell, her face ashen, The doctor caught her, lowering her gently to a folding chair as the celebration around them faltered. "Mom." Ethan wheeled toward her frantically, the crowd parting before him. Phantom followed, ears pricked forward in alarm at Ethan's distress. "I'm fine," Amanda protested weakly, her voice thin as paper. "Just dizzy. Haven't eaten today." But the tremor in her hands told a different story, as did the dark circles beneath her eyes that no makeup could fully conceal. Dr. Mitchell pressed 2 fingers to Amanda's wrist, her expression betraying professional concern. "When was the last time you slept more than 3 hours?" she asked quietly. Amanda looked away. "I've been busy. The showcase preparation, extra shifts at the hospital." "Mom?" Ethan's voice cracked. "What aren't you telling me?" A shadow fell across them. Martin Reed stood nearby, his attorney at his shoulder like a well-dressed familiar. His face was unreadable as he cleared his throat. "Impressive demonstration." "Ethan," he said, his voice carrying the practiced smoothness of a man accustomed to negotiation. "Your father would have been proud." The compliment landed like a stone. Before Ethan could respond, Martin turned to Amanda. "I believe we have business to discuss. Amanda, my offer still stands, but in light of today's performance, I'm prepared to be somewhat more generous. Shall we say 10% above my original figure, Doctor?" Mitchell's hand tightened protectively on Amanda's shoulder. "This isn't the time, Mr. Reed." "On the contrary," Martin replied, unmoved. "Time is precisely what's at issue. The bank's representative informs me they're proceeding with foreclosure paperwork tomorrow morning." The news hit Ethan like physical pain. All their work, the showcase, Phantom's transformation, none of it had mattered. They'd still failed. His eyes found his mother's, saw the defeat there, and something inside him shattered. "The demonstration bought us nothing?" he asked, voice hollow. Martin had the decency to look uncomfortable. "The bank has procedures. Ethan, one successful event doesn't erase months of missed payments, but my offer would allow your mother to clear the debt and have something left to start over. Start over where—" Ethan's voice rose despite his efforts to control it. "This is our home." Amanda reached for his hand, her fingers cold despite the warm day. "Ethan, please. Mr. Reed is offering us a chance. A chance to lose everything Dad built, everything we've worked for." Martin's expression hardened slightly. "Your father made his choices, Ethan. Now your mother must make hers." The words fell like a slap. Before Ethan could retort, Jackson appeared at his side, his weathered face tight with barely controlled anger. "This discussion is over," he said flatly. "Amanda needs rest. Whatever decisions need making can wait until tomorrow. Timing is not optional in this matter." Martin's attorney interjected, stepping forward with a folder. "The paperwork must be completed by close of business today to halt the foreclosure process." Jackson's hand settled on Ethan's shoulder, a steadying weight, a silent command for patience. "Then it'll have to wait an hour while Mrs. Walker catches her breath. This boy just gave your boss the show of a lifetime. The least you can do is allow his mother a moment of dignity." A tense silence followed, broken by a commotion near the arena entrance. Tyler Reed pushed through the dispersing crowd, his face flushed with urgency. "Dad," he called, "we need to talk, now." Martin turned, irritation flashing across his careful mask. "Not now. Tyler, we're in the middle of a business discussion." "That's what we need to talk about." Tyler's gaze darted to Ethan, then back to his father. "Your business. With the Walkers." Something in his tone made Martin pause. Father and son moved several yards away, their heated whispers just beyond earshot. Ethan watched Tyler's gestures grow increasingly emphatic while Martin's posture stiffened with each passing second. "What's happening?" Amanda murmured, still too pale. "I don't know," Ethan replied. A sudden crash yanked their attention toward the stables. One of the stable hands came running, face white with alarm. "It's Phantom!" he shouted. "Something spooked him. He's gone crazy in his stall." Ethan's blood ran cold. He spun his wheelchair, pushing toward the stable with every ounce of strength, heedless of Jackson's warning shout. The scene that greeted him was chaos. Phantom's stall door had been partially torn from its hinges. The magnificent stallion reared inside the confined space, eyes wild with pain or fear. Blood streaked his gleaming shoulder where he'd caught himself on a broken board. "Get back," someone yelled, as Ethan approached. "He'll kill you." But Ethan could see what the others couldn't, the frightened intelligence in Phantom's eyes, the way the horse frantically scanned the crowd gathering outside his stall. "Everyone back up," Ethan commanded, his voice surprisingly strong. "Give him space." To his astonishment, the onlookers obeyed. Retreating several steps, Ethan wheeled forward slowly, stopping just beyond striking distance of the frantic stallion. "Easy, boy," he said softly. "Easy. It's me. You're safe." Phantom's head jerked toward the familiar voice. His nostrils flared, taking in Ethan's scent. The wild thrashing slowed, though his sides still heaved with panicked breaths. "That's it," Ethan continued, keeping his tone low and steady. "Just breathe. No one's going to hurt you. I'm right here." The stallion lowered his head slightly, recognition replacing blind fear in his dark eyes. Blood dripped steadily from his shoulder, painting crimson streaks down his ebony leg. "He needs a vet," Ethan said over his shoulder. "Now." Jackson materialized beside him. "Already called. What happened?" "I don't know. He was fine when we left the arena." Ethan scanned the stall, looking for what might have triggered Phantom's panic. His eyes caught on something glinting in the straw, a piece of broken glass. "There," he pointed. "Someone left that in his stall." Jackson retrieved the glass shard with careful fingers. "This isn't accidental," he said grimly. "Someone wanted to make sure your demonstration was a one-time event." Before Ethan could process this, Old Bill appeared at the stable entrance, his ancient face grave. "There's more. Northwest corner of the barn. Roof's damaged from last week's storm. Whole section just came down." The hits kept coming. Ethan's triumphant moment disintegrated with each new catastrophe. He looked back at Phantom, who had calmed enough to stand trembling in his ruined stall, blood still flowing from his wounded shoulder. "How bad is the roof?" Jackson asked. "Bad enough to make this building unsafe," Bill replied. "County'll condemn it if they inspect. No way to afford repairs with the bank breathing down our necks." Ethan's hands clenched on the wheels of his chair. Everything was falling apart, literally and figuratively. The showcase victory had turned to ash in his mouth. "The vet's here," someone called from outside. Dr. Dishar Patricia Lawson strode into the stable, medical bag in hand, her expression shifting from professional detachment to alarm as she assessed Phantom's condition. "What happened?" "Someone left glass in his stall," Ethan replied, voice hollow. "Doctor?" Lawson frowned, stepping carefully into the damaged stall. Phantom shied away, but Ethan's soft reassurance kept him from bolting. The vet's examination was swift but thorough, her hands gentle on the trembling stallion. "The cut's deep," she finally said. "He'll need stitches, antibiotics. There may be glass fragments embedded in the wound." She glanced at Ethan. "There's a risk of infection. Worst case. He could develop complications, joint damage. Lameness." Each word drove into Ethan like a nail. "But he'll recover." "Right. Doctor." Lawson's hesitation was answer enough. "It depends on the aftercare. This kind of injury requires specialized treatment, daily wound cleaning, controlled exercise, possibly even surgical follow-up. Her expression softened. It won't be cheap. Ethan. The irony was almost too much to bear. They couldn't save the ranch. Now they might not even be able to save Phantom. As if sensing his despair, the stallion lowered his great head until his muzzle rested gently against Ethan's shoulder. The gesture, so filled with trust despite his pain, broke something inside Ethan. Tears he'd held back for 2 years spilled down his cheeks unchecked. "I'm sorry," he whispered against Phantom's neck. "I'm so sorry I couldn't protect you." Behind him, Amanda appeared in the stable doorway, supported by Dr. Mitchell. Her face, already pale, went ashen at the sight of Phantom's injury and her son's obvious heartbreak. "Oh, Ethan," she breathed. Another figure stepped into view, Martin Reed, his expression inscrutable as he surveyed the damaged stable, the bleeding stallion, the devastated family. After a long moment, he cleared his throat. "I've reconsidered my position," he said formally. "I'd like to purchase the stallion as well as the property. My offer now includes provisions for his medical care." The words landed like a final blow. They wouldn't just lose their home, they'd lose Phantom too. "No." Ethan's voice shook. "No deal. He's not for sale." "Be reasonable, Ethan," Martin replied, not unkindly. "The horse needs expert care you can no longer provide. I have resources, facilities." "He stays with me," Ethan interrupted, fury and desperation warring in his chest. "I don't care what it costs." The standoff lingered, broken finally by Tyler's quiet voice from the doorway. "Dad," he said, "let it go. Please." Something passed between father and son, a silent communication Ethan couldn't interpret. Martin's jaw tightened, but he nodded once before turning on his heel and exiting the stable without another word. In the deafening silence that followed, Dr. Lawson began preparing her medical supplies. "I need to treat him now," she said quietly, "before shock sets in." Ethan nodded, swallowing hard. "Do whatever it takes," he said, knowing he had no means to fulfill the promise. "Whatever it costs." As the vet began her work, Ethan thought he'd experienced the limits of a single day's heartbreak. He was wrong. The next blow came in the form of a local newspaper reporter who'd lingered after the showcase. "Is it true the demonstration was staged?" he asked, notebook in hand. "A source claims the horse was drugged to ensure cooperation." The accusation hung in the air like poison gas. Somehow, in the midst of collapse, someone had found the energy for malice. "Get out," Jackson growled, stepping between the reporter and Ethan, "before I make you regret that question." But the damage was done. By morning, the rumor would spread. The miracle would become a fraud. Everything Ethan had fought for would be tainted by doubt. Outside, thunder rumbled across Kentucky hills. Rain began to fall, finding its way through the damaged barn roof in steady, relentless drops. Rain battered the farmhouse roof all night, a persistent drumming that matched the throbbing in Ethan's head. He hadn't slept. How could he? With Phantom injured in a stable that might collapse at any moment, Jackson had insisted on staying with the horse, sending Ethan home with a gruff command to rest that they both knew he wouldn't obey. Dawn broke gray and sodden. Ethan maneuvered his wheelchair onto the porch, watching headlights cut through the murky half-light. An unfamiliar truck was pulling up the drive, moving with the careful deliberation of someone navigating unfamiliar territory. Ethan tensed, preparing for more bad news, more complications. After yesterday's cascade of disasters, what fresh hell could this morning bring? The truck door swung open, and Jackson Carter emerged. his weathered face haggard from the sleepless night. But it was the folder clutched in his scarred hand that caught Ethan's attention, thick with papers. Official-looking. Ominous. "You look like hell," Ethan observed as Jackson limped up the ramp, rainwater streaming from his battered hat. Feelings mutual. Jackson settled heavily onto the porch swing, the wood creaking beneath him. For a long moment, he said nothing, just stared out at the rain-soaked fields of Willow Creek, at the peeling barn in the distance where Phantom still rested. "How is he?" Ethan finally asked, afraid of the answer. Holding his own. Doc Lawson came back at 4 to check the wound. No signs of infection yet. Jackson's fingers tapped restlessly against the folder. "But that's not why I'm here." The front door opened behind them. Amanda appeared, wrapped in her old flannel robe, her face showing the strain of recent days. "Jackson," she acknowledged quietly. "Coffee." He shook his head. "Need to talk to you both. It's important." Something in his tone made Amanda sink into the wicker chair beside Ethan, her hands twisting nervously in her lap. "I haven't been entirely straight with you," Jackson began, his voice rough as gravel. "About my connection to this place, to your family." Ethan felt a strange hollowness open up inside him, as if his body were preparing itself for another blow. "What do you mean?" Amanda asked. "I knew Robert, your husband." Jackson looked directly at Amanda. "We served together. 10th Mountain Division, back before either of us had any sense." Amanda's face showed only confusion. "Robert never mentioned you. He wouldn't have. We lost touch, for reasons that seemed important at the time." Jackson's scarred fingers tightened on the folder. "But that's not all. After the service, we went into business together, bought our first horse as a joint investment." "That's not possible," Amanda protested. "Robert started Willow Creek on his own. He told me everything." "Not everything." Jackson's voice softened with something like regret. "We had a falling out. Bad one. I walked away from the partnership, signed over my stake for a fraction of its worth. Your husband built Willow Creek from what was left." Ethan struggled to process this revelation. "You're saying you were Dad's business partner? Why show up now, after all these years after he's gone?" Jackson opened the folder, extracting a stack of legal documents yellowed with age. "Because of these." "And because of Phantom." Amanda took the papers with trembling hands, her eyes widening as she scanned the contents. "These are ownership certificates, partnership agreements. Kept them all this time. Couldn't bring myself to destroy them. Even after everything." Jackson shifted his gaze to Ethan. "Your father and I had different ideas about training. I was younger then, more impatient. He believed in the slow way, in building trust. We fought about it constantly." "So you left?" Ethan supplied. "I left," Jackson confirmed. "Figured I'd start my own operation, show him my methods were better." A bitter smile twisted his lips. "Never got around to it. Military injuries caught up with me. Then the drinking. By the time I straightened myself out, your father had made Willow Creek into something special, something I couldn't have built with my bull-headed approach." Amanda looked up from the papers, her face pale with realization. "These are still valid. You still own 20% of Willow Creek Ranch." "On paper, yes. Never exercised those rights. Didn't feel I deserved to." Jackson leaned forward, elbows on knees. "But that's not the important part. The important part is Phantom." "What about him?" Ethan asked, a new fear clutching at his throat. "Remember, I told you your father sold that Friesian colt Midnight Rambler to a buyer from Ohio. That wasn't the whole story." Jackson produced another document from the folder. "Robert never transferred full ownership. He kept breeding rights, a 50% stake in any offspring, and a buyback clause in case of mistreatment." Amanda shook her head in disbelief. That doesn't make sense. Why wouldn't he have told me? Because it wasn't strictly legal. The way he structured it. The buyer Talbot didn't fully understand what he was signing. Your husband was protecting his investment, protecting the horse. Jackson handed the contract to Ethan. When Talbot died and the horse came up for auction as part of the estate, I recognized the name, the bloodline. I called in favors, got the rescue organization to intervene before the widow could sell him. So, Phantom legally belongs to us. Ethan's mind raced with implications. 50% to your family, 50% to Talbot's estate. But with the abuse clause triggered, your father's right of reversion activates. I've had lawyers looking at it for weeks. Jackson's expression turned grim. That's why I've been pushing you so hard with him. I needed to be sure he could be rehabilitated before I showed you these, before I dragged you both into another legal battle. Amanda stood abruptly, pacing the width of the porch. This is a lot. Jackson. Why now? Why not tell us this when you first brought Phantom to Willow Creek? Jackson's eyes tracked her movement. Would you have believed me? A stranger showing up with old papers, claiming partnership with your dead husband? He shook his head. I needed to see if the boy had Robert's gift. Needed to know if there was something worth fighting for. Ethan stared at the contract in his hands, his father's familiar signature stark against the yellowed page. Does this help us with the bank? With the foreclosure? Maybe. These documents could complicate the bank's claim. At minimum, they establish that Phantom is a valuable asset not included in the mortgage agreement. Jackson straightened. But there's more. Something I discovered last night. He produced a final document not yellowed with age, but crisp and new. After you left, I went looking through the old office files. Found this in a box marked with your father's initials. Amanda took the paper, her breath catching visibly as she read, It's a life insurance policy, one I didn't know about. Her voice trembled. Taken out 6 months before his death. Dad had an extra policy, Ethan asked, confusion giving way to a terrible suspicion. Why would he hide that from you? Amanda's face crumpled. Because he was planning it. Ethan, his death wasn't an accident. The truth Ethan had glimpsed in his father's hidden letter now stood fully revealed, stark and painful in the gray morning light. His father's accident on the old tractor, the one that had seemed so strange, so unlike the careful man they'd known, had been a deliberate choice. He did it for the insurance money, Amanda whispered. To save the ranch, to save us from the debts. Jackson's expression softened with old grief. Robert always did think he had to handle everything himself, too proud to ask for help, even at the end. Why didn't you tell me? Ethan asked his mother, voice cracking. All this time, I thought... I wanted to protect you, Amanda replied, tears streaming freely now. You'd already lost so much. Your father, then the accident. I couldn't bear for you to know he'd chosen to leave us. The revelation settled over Ethan like a heavy blanket suffocating, yet somehow containing the pain that might otherwise have torn him apart. The father he'd idolized, the man who'd taught him that anything was possible with enough patience and faith, had given up, had abandoned them to face the aftermath alone. The policy lapsed, Amanda continued, wiping her tears. The company investigated, found evidence it wasn't an accident. They denied the claim. I've been fighting them ever since, but without the money. We lost the ranch anyway. Ethan finished for her. The bitter irony of it all threatened to overwhelm him. His father's sacrifice had been for nothing. A sharp knock at the screen door made them all turn. Tyler Reed stood there, soaked from the rain, his expensive jacket plastered to his shoulders. I need to talk to you, he said, voice urgent. All of you. Amanda hesitated, then nodded, holding the door open. Tyler stepped onto the porch, water pooling around his boots. His face showed the strain of a sleepless night. "My father doesn't know I'm here," he began without preamble. "If he finds out, he'll—" He swallowed hard. "It doesn't matter. You need to know the truth." "About your father's business dealings with my dad?" Jackson straightened, his expression sharpening. "What about them? Dad didn't just want to buy your property after it went under. He orchestrated it." Tyler's words tumbled out in a rush. "He's been planning it for years. He pressured the bank to call in loans early, blocked other investors who might have helped refinance the mortgage." "That's illegal," Amanda said, her voice faint with shock. "It's unethical, definitely." "Illegal in some cases." Tyler ran a hand through his wet hair. "I only found out yesterday when I overheard him talking to his lawyer about ensuring the foreclosure went through regardless of the showcase success." Ethan stared at Tyler, anger warring with a strange sense of validation. "Why are you telling us this?" "Because I'm tired of the lies. My father's mine." Tyler met Ethan's gaze directly. "I've already contacted the bank's regional manager. Told him everything, including my father's manipulation of the foreclosure process. He's agreed to review the case." "Why would you betray your own father?" Jackson asked, suspicion evident in his tone. "Because I owe it to Ethan." Tyler's face flushed with shame. "The accident wasn't just my fault because I knew about the washout and didn't warn him. I created it. Loosened the soil the night before our race. Made sure the edge would give way if hit at the right angle." His voice broke. "I was supposed to be in the lead. It was meant for me. A dramatic crash I'd escape at the last second, to finally get my father's attention away from his business deals." The confession landed in the rain-soaked silence of the porch. Ethan felt as though the ground beneath his wheelchair had suddenly dropped away. All this time, all this pain, not an accident at all, but a teenager's desperate cry for attention gone horribly wrong. "You." And he couldn't form words, couldn't process the magnitude of the revelation. "I've told the sheriff everything." Tyler continued, his voice steadier now that the truth was out. "Signed a statement this morning. My father's attorney is already talking about a settlement. Restitution." He pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket, placing it on the small table between them. "This is just the beginning. It won't fix what happened, but maybe it can help save your home. Help with Phantom's medical bills." Ethan stared at the envelope, unable to reach for it. The anger he'd nurtured for 2 years had been his anchor, his certainty in a world turned upside down. Now even that was compromised by the broken young man standing before him, offering restitution that could never be enough. "There's one more thing," Tyler said, reaching into his pocket again. "Something else I found while looking through my father's files." He produced a small voice recorder. "Evidence that my father knew about your dad's financial troubles and deliberately exploited them, including a conversation where your father begged for more time, just before his death." Amanda made a small, wounded sound. Jackson's hand found her shoulder, steadying her. "Play it," Ethan said, his voice strange in his own ears. Tyler pressed the button, and Robert Walker's voice filled the porch, desperate, pleading, but unmistakably the father Ethan had known and lost. As the recording continued, Martin Reed's cold responses laid bare the calculated destruction of Willow Creek Ranch, the deliberate dismantling of one man's dream to feed another's ambition. When it ended, no one spoke. The rain continued to fall, washing away the last of Ethan's certainties, leaving only the raw truth in its wake. They had lost Willow Creek not through failure or bad luck, but through systematic sabotage. His father had died not from carelessness, but from despair manufactured by Martin Reed's ruthless business tactics. And the bitter rivalry that had cost Ethan his legs had been born not of Tyler's malice, but of his broken need for a father's love. The truth, in all its jagged complexity, offered no comfort. But it did offer something Ethan had thought forever lost a path forward. 6 months later, the sign at the entrance to Willow Creek Ranch gleamed with fresh paint. Willow Creek Equine Therapy Center, it proclaimed in bold green letters, with "Founded by Robert Walker" in smaller script beneath. The potholes in the driveway had been filled, the fences mended, the main barn rebuilt with a sturdy new roof that wouldn't surrender to the next storm. Ethan wheeled himself along the stone path connecting the barn to the newly constructed therapy pavilion. The specialized ramp allowed him easy access to the raised platform where clients could safely interact with horses at eye level without mounting. It had been Jackson's design, sketched on a diner napkin during one of their planning sessions, now brought to life in cedar and steel. From within the main arena came the sound of Dr. Mitchell's voice, patient and encouraging as she guided a new client through their first session. Ethan paused at the entrance, taking in the scene without interrupting. A young girl, no more than 8, sat in a wheelchair much like his own, her small face alight with wonder as Phantom stood calmly before her, his magnificent head lowered to meet her hesitant touch. "That's it, Lily," Dr. Mitchell encouraged. "He can feel how gentle you are. See how he's responding." The Friesian's coat gleamed like polished obsidian in the afternoon light streaming through the high windows. The scar on his shoulder had healed into a pale line, barely visible unless you knew to look for it. Much like the scars we all carry, Ethan thought. Always there, but no longer defining. "Ethan," Amanda called from the office doorway, waving a stack of papers. "The last of the insurance forms came through. We're officially accredited now." His mother looked years younger than she had 6 months ago. The crushing weight of secrets and financial ruin had lifted, replaced by purposeful energy that animated her movements. She'd cut her hair shorter, started wearing colors again. Small changes that reflected the larger transformations in their lives. "That's great, Mom," Ethan replied, wheeling toward her. "Did Jackson see the delivery truck? The new mounting lift was supposed to arrive today. He's directing them around back now." Amanda's smile softened. "He's like a kid with a new toy whenever equipment comes in. Who knew that grumpy old soldier was secretly a gadget enthusiast?" Ethan laughed, the sound still surprising him sometimes how natural it felt now, how easily it came. "He's rebuilding too, in his own way." The transformation of Willow Creek had begun with Tyler Reed's confession and the evidence he'd provided against his father. The bank had indeed reviewed their case, freezing the foreclosure proceedings pending investigation. Then came the media coverage, local at first, then regional, finally catching the attention of a national morning show that featured Ethan and Phantom's story. The flood of support that followed had been overwhelming. Donations poured in for Phantom's medical care. A prominent equine veterinary hospital offered their services at cost. 3 neighboring ranchers volunteered labor and materials to repair the storm damage. A community fundraiser organized by Dr. Mitchell's colleagues raised enough to cover 3 months of mortgage payments. But the true turning point came from an unexpected source, William Thompson, Old Bill, who had worked at Willow Creek since Robert Walker first broke ground. "Always told your daddy he was sitting on gold," the old man had said, producing a faded bloodline certificate from his modest cabin on the property. "That Friesian stallion ain't just pretty. He's royalty." The document revealed what even Jackson hadn't known: Phantom's lineage traced directly to one of the most prestigious Friesian breeding lines in Europe. His value as a stud, once his rehabilitation was complete, would be considerable. The first breeding contract alone had been enough to clear their outstanding debt with the bank. With financial breathing room secured, Amanda and Ethan had made a decision that would have seemed impossible months earlier. They would transform Willow Creek from a traditional training facility into a specialized therapy center, combining Ethan's gift with horses and Dr. Mitchell's expertise in rehabilitation. Now, 6 months later, they had 8 therapy clients, a waiting list 3 months long, and inquiries from rehabilitation centers in neighboring states about their pioneering program. "There's someone here to see you," Amanda said, interrupting Ethan's reflections. "In the small paddock." Something in her tone made Ethan glance up sharply. "Who? Go see for yourself." Curious, Ethan made his way to the small training area behind the main barn. The figure standing at the fence was immediately recognizable despite the months since their last encounter. "Tyler," Ethan acknowledged, stopping his wheelchair a few feet away. Tyler Reed turned, nervous fingers tapping against the fence rail. He looked different, thinner, less polished, his designer clothes replaced by worn jeans and a simple work shirt. "I wasn't sure you'd talk to me," he said quietly. "Honestly, I wasn't sure either." The settlement from the Reed family had rebuilt Willow Creek's infrastructure, paid for Phantom's medical care, and established a foundation for the therapy program. Martin Reed had avoided criminal charges through a combination of legal maneuvering and substantial restitution payments, but his reputation in the business community was irreparably damaged. He'd relocated to Florida, leaving his Kentucky holdings under management. Tyler had disappeared after his testimony transferred to a West Coast university, according to local gossip. Ethan hadn't expected to see him again. "Your place looks amazing," Tyler offered, gesturing toward the renovated facilities. "Mom showed me the article in the Equestrian Journal. You're doing important work here." "We're trying," Ethan replied, studying the face of the boy who had once been his friend, then his rival, then the architect of his greatest loss. "What brings you back to Kentucky?" Tyler's gaze dropped to his boots. "Finished my first semester at Stanford, thought about staying out west permanently, but—" He shrugged. "This is home, even with everything that happened. I've been working at the rescue center over in Lexington, learning about rehabilitation for abused horses." An uncomfortable silence stretched between them, filled with unspoken history. "I don't expect forgiveness," Tyler finally continued. "I know what I did can't be undone, but I was hoping maybe I could volunteer here sometimes, work with the horses, help with maintenance, whatever you need." The request hung in the air, sincere but burdened by the weight of their shared past. 6 months ago, Ethan would have rejected it outright, the anger still too raw, the wounds too fresh. But something had shifted during Willow Creek's rebirth, something in himself that had begun to heal alongside Phantom. "We could use help exercising the therapy horses," he said carefully. 2-hour commitment, Tuesdays and Thursdays. Jackson supervises all volunteers." Relief washed over Tyler's face. "Thank you. I'll work hard, I promise." "It's not forgiveness," Ethan clarified. "Not yet. But maybe it's a start." Tyler nodded, accepting the boundaries. "That's more than I deserve." Yet from the main arena came the sound of delighted laughter. Little Lily, discovering the joy of connection with a 1,000-pound being who responded to her gentlest touch. The sound carried across the spring air, a reminder of why Willow Creek existed now. "I should get back," Ethan said, turning his wheelchair. "First session with a new client is crucial for building trust." "Of course." Tyler stepped aside. "I'll check in with Jackson about the volunteer schedule." As Ethan wheeled away, Tyler called after him. "For what it's worth, I think your dad would be proud. Of all this. Of you." The words followed Ethan back to the arena, settling into a place inside him that had been hollow since finding his father's letter. Perhaps Tyler was right. Perhaps Robert Walker, for all his flaws and final despair, would have found hope in what his son had built from the ashes of his dream. Inside the arena, Lily's session was concluding. Dr. Mitchell helped guide her wheelchair down from the platform while Phantom stood patiently nearby. ears pricked forward with interest. "Can I come back tomorrow?" Lily asked, her small voice tremulous with hope. "You're scheduled for twice a week," her mother replied gently, "but we'll definitely be back on Thursday." "Phantom will be waiting for you," Ethan assured her, wheeling to the Friesian's side. The stallion acknowledged him with a soft whicker, leaning slightly into Ethan's outstretched hand. He never forgets a friend. After they departed, Ethan remained with Phantom in the quiet arena, the afternoon sun casting long shadows across the freshly raked sand. So much had changed in 6 months. The horse that everyone had feared, the boy that everyone had pitied, both had found purpose in their brokenness, strength in their shared wounds. "We did it, big guy," Ethan murmured, running his hand along Phantom's powerful neck. "We rebuilt." Jackson appeared in the doorway, his perpetual limp more pronounced after a long day. "Feed trucks unloaded, Bill's handling evening meals." He nodded toward Phantom. "How's our star attraction holding up?" "Strong as ever," Ethan replied. "The vet says his shoulder's completely healed, no lasting damage." "Tough horse." Jackson's weathered face creased in a rare smile. "Like his person." The comparison would have offended Ethan once. Now he recognized the truth in it, the resilience they shared, the unwillingness to be defined by their scars. "I've been thinking about what's next," Ethan said, watching Phantom's ears swivel with interest at his voice. "For the program, for us. Oh, I want to get back on a horse." Jackson's expression remained carefully neutral. "You sure about that? Your upper body strength is impressive, but balance would be an issue without leg control. I know. I've been researching specialized saddles, adaptive equipment." Ethan met Jackson's gaze steadily. "It won't be like before. Nothing is. But I think it's time to try." A look of respect crossed Jackson's face. "Your father always said the true test of a horseman wasn't how well he rode when everything was perfect. It was whether he got back on after a fall." "Will you help me?" Ethan asked. "Design whatever adaptations I'll need. Already got some ideas sketched out," Jackson admitted. "Been waiting for you to ask." Later that evening, as sunset painted the Kentucky hills in shades of gold and amber, Ethan sat in the field where he'd once galloped without a care in the world. Phantom grazed peacefully nearby, occasionally lifting his head to check on his human companion. From this vantage point, Ethan could see all of Willow Creek not as it had been in his father's day, but as it had become through pain and perseverance, a place of healing, a sanctuary for broken spirits learning to trust again. In the gathering dusk, Ethan felt a strange sensation in his legs, not movement, not quite feeling, but a warmth, a tingling that Dr. Mitchell had cautiously suggested might indicate nerve regeneration. It was too soon to hope. She'd warned. Too soon to expect miracles. But Ethan had learned something about miracles in the past 6 months. Sometimes they didn't announce themselves with fanfare. Sometimes they came quietly, in the form of a stallion kneeling before a wheelchair, a community rallying around a struggling family, or a former friend seeking redemption through service. "Come on, boy," he called softly to Phantom. "Time to go home." The Friesian lifted his head, trotting over with the fluid grace that had captivated audiences at the showcase, without command or signal. He lowered himself to his knees beside Ethan's wheelchair, not in submission, but in partnership. Some wounds never fully heal. Some losses can never be recovered. But as Phantom's gentle breath warmed Ethan's hand in the fading light, he understood that broken didn't mean destroyed. Sometimes it just meant ready to be rebuilt into something stronger, something truer, something beautiful in its imperfection. And that, perhaps, was the greatest legacy his father had left behind. In our twilight years, we recognize a truth that Ethan and Phantom's journey beautifully illustrates our deepest scars. often become our greatest purpose. When life derails our carefully laid plans through illness, loss, or betrayal, we stand at a crossroads between bitterness and redemption. The broken pieces we once mourned can become the foundation for something more meaningful than what we originally built. Remember when our generation faced challenges, how communities rallied. Neighbors appeared with casseroles and helping hands. Ethan found this same timeless support, proving that compassion never goes out of style. His story reminds us that our own struggles weren't meaningless, they equipped us to help others navigate similar paths. The connection between boy and horse transcends words because it speaks to what we all seek: understanding without judgment, acceptance of our limitations, and the courage to begin again. In our wisdom years, we've learned that true healing rarely comes from erasing the past, but from repurposing its pain into something beautiful. Like Phantom's scarred shoulder or Ethan's paralyzed legs, our imperfections don't diminish our worth, they authenticate our journey and magnify the triumph of our resilience.